Okay, so without further ado, introducing the OG of disclosure himself, Dr. Stephen Greer.
Thank you, guys. We thought this would be funny. It's fun. Some guy, after I was on, I think it was Khloe Kardashian's podcast, named Tupacabra, started making these. And there's a whole series of them. And someone sent it to me and said, "You're the OG." I'm so clueless. I said, "What's an OG?" This is the original gangster. I said, "Oh, okay." Did you ever heard this term? I don't know. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. You're great, and I really appreciate your giving your weekend to this wonderful adventure, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, CE5 Contact. And those of you online, thanks for joining us. There are more people online than here. And it's going to be a great weekend. The weather's going to be fine. We had our big storms last night. And I want to just acknowledge our team because they're all volunteer guys, right? So I want to acknowledge Raven, who's been with me for 27, 28 years. You've met her. Karina, they pretty much put this together. Karina, thank you very much. And up in the cockpit up there, we've got Justice Campbell, Marcel. I think I see Lara back there. Thank you. And you met Ashley already. So, and all the other volunteers, I think there are about 15 or 20 folks, and I appreciate all of your help. We couldn't do this without that. We have such a skeleton staff and what have you, and it's just been a labor of love. And most of all, my wife, 46 years, we just had our anniversary about a month ago, and so she's the rock who really has run everything. This project started 35 years ago when I was 35, and I just turned 70. So, so it's been quite the journey, to say the least. None of it could have happened without Emily. So thank you, Emily. So what we're going to be doing tonight is sort of the maiden voyage launch into the CE5 contact protocols. And we're going to go into some of the details of that and really start with cleaning the palette, like making things very clear. So we're all on the same page. I want to just ask, how many people have done CE5 contact with a group or with a larger group like this before? I'm just curious to see hands. So maybe about half or so. So this is quite the adventure, and hopefully you all have the CE5 contact app, which you can get at the stores and then practice it on your own as well. But the intention of this is to go through all the latest updates in disclosure and all the updates, dealing with what we're doing in Washington and with law enforcement and this government and other governments around the world, so you have an inside view, because I'm basically the primary intel source for those operations right now. So we'll get you up to speed to the extent I can speak about it. There's a whole lot going on right now. I mean, just before I came here, there's a new whistleblower who is a very key one that has to be secured. So this is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation right now. But the heart and the soul of what we're doing is CE5 contact. That was the original project, 1990, based on me having had a contact experience when I was 18 in 1973, before most of you were born, and 52 years ago, and October of that year. And I went on a craft, and we created the CE5 contact protocols at that time. And that's how it all started. But I didn't do anything with it officially or out there until 1990. And now we have CE5 teams all over the world and in really every country on Earth, which is very gratifying. So thank you guys for doing that. I also want to acknowledge and thank the ambassador level donors who are here. You've made this very possible, and the VIP contributors, but all of you. Because in the next few months, we have to come up with around $700,000 to pay for some very critical things that are going on that we have to fund with whistleblowers and investigations, as well as this new documentary that we are just now putting together. So those of you helping with that, thank you very much. It's a big undertaking to do a feature film like that, which we hope comes out maybe later this year, early next year. It's just in the rough assembly stage now. Everything's been filmed, but that's the easy part. The hard part is in taking hundreds of hours of film footage and creating an hour and a half, 2 hour feature film, right? So that's where we are at this stage. So those of you who've contributed and have supported this conference and other events, I really want to thank you. Couldn't do it without you, for sure. So God bless you. Now what I want to do is, on the next thing, we're going to do the introduction to this whole contact concept. Well, I guess the PowerPoint's not working. And your PowerPoint working? No? Oh, okay, here we go. The first card didn't come up. Am I synced with you guys? Okay, all right. So the first part, I call it cosmic detox. It's like,
Free your mind!
That's it. My favorite song about that is In Vogue, the group, and they go, free your mind! It's like, yeah. Are y'all ready for this, Lord? Yeah, let's go. All right, and the big problem with it is most people come into doing CE5 contact with a lot of baggage, if they've looked into this subject. And there has to be some clarification of all these issues before you go out and attempt to invite. We don't call them. They're not our butlers at Downton Abbey. They're being invited to interact with us as fellow conscious beings in the cosmos, these extraterrestrial beings. And they will, if you approach them with respect and with a pure heart and a clear intention. The actual protocols and techniques are secondary to that. But that can't happen if you go into that effort with the burden of all the false myths, the disinformation myths, and the negativity that is part and parcel of the UFO subject. It won't happen. So that's why we want to cleanse the palate. And so on this next slide, you'll see what I call the gravitational pull of the black hole of disinformation. And in that, you see all these aspects to it. You got the pop culture things that they call abductions. You have that the ETs are demons. This is Charlie. Tucker Carlson has been convinced that that's the case, as a couple members of Congress, about the whole thing of the ET weapons in space, the alien threat, interdimensional phenomenon. We'll talk about this in a minute. And of course, everything out there is alien because we don't have man-made UFOs when 80% or more of every UFO seen is from my uncle's old company, Northrop Grumman, or Lockheed Skunk Works, or Raytheon, or EG&G, or et cetera. All right? Now, if you look, here's your path of the people who are trying to find the truth about this. And this is all of you, the President, the Senate Intelligence Committee Chair, everyone. They start to look into this, and this pull of the dominant paradigm pulls them into this dark space of all the false mythologies. Very few make it through to here and understand the actual truth and why the ETs are here, how long have they been here, how do we make contact with them, on and on and on and on. So that's what I want to do here initially before we go into doing the meditation and the remote viewing and the contact protocol the first time tonight in here. Now the other nights we're going to be out there in the wilderness on this sacred land. And I want to thank the Native American people who are here, but also hosting us, but also those of you who are also a part Native. They're the first people of the country. I'm 5/16 Cherokee. And we need to honor them and their tradition and the fact that we are all their guests. So thank you, all of you. So one of the things that we want to look at on this is what are the things that people get confused about? And I think let's go through some of these And I'll show you what actual ETs, when we're out in the field, have done. And some of you have seen these. This one is the light bean. It's a bean that was on the beach about 10, 15 feet in front of me back in the Gulf Coast of Florida a few years ago. And it's a beautiful bean. You can see kind of the eyes glowing. And this was trans-dimensional. So they traverse from one star system to here, going through other dimensions. The ones, all of them can stay partially out of this dimension and partially in this. Or they can be full flesh and blood. It's like a dimmer switch. You can get very bright or very dim or vanish, off. But they're not, when it's off, they're still there. You just can't see them. But there are sensors that can see them as they are dematerialized. And we'll get into this through the course of the weekend. This particular being, is a species, is probably around 1 billion years ahead of humans. And they would be easily confused with celestial beings or angelic beings, which is a different species at a different dimension, celestial versus star systems. And we're going to get into this in depth this weekend. This is Bijou, that funny video. Bijou was taken by Raven back in the early 2010 or 9 or something, and he was waving at us in the desert around our circle. And we saw this beautiful sphere of light come in, and by my shoulder, we were at a break, and I said, we need to get everyone back together. And there was a group of ETs talking right outside our circle. There's maybe 35 people there. And everyone heard female voices, but I heard one. I said, no, there's one male. And there were 4 or 5 other that were female voices. A language you couldn't understand. It was not English or any human language. But it was just, it was like incarnate voices out in the clear air of the desert. And I'm looking with night scopes. There's nothing there. Suddenly, this sphere comes back on and illuminates all of our seats with this weird light, not like anything we would have. And at that point, Raven took a picture, and in the picture frame was Bijou floating about 3-4 feet in the desert above and waving to us, and that's Bijou. He's from the Andromeda Galaxy, and he was with us the last 2 or 3 nights out at this regional park that the ambassadors were there for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights. And this, of course, is the healer. This is the ET who healed the man of his hearing. You saw the movie Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, probably. But it's a very beautiful story. And this is a species, it's hard to tell because it's at night, and it's sort of a triangular head. It's like, you know what a praying mantis head looks like? Very similar to a praying mantis head. And sort of a beak here, right there. And a tunic, there's his hand. And there's a older man right here in the dark. Now, there is this pitch darkness up in Oracle, Arizona, south of here, near Mount Lemmon. And this ET came in first by hearing footsteps behind us. But there was nobody there. It was just like the voices. So everyone heard this walking. But it wasn't like, a javelina or something. It was boom, boom, like a person. So we said, okay. So I said, there was a man to my left named David Marconi. He's a very famous screenwriter, wrote Enemy of the State and The Foreigner and all this. He had a great Nikon camera on a tripod with a remote to take a picture without touching it under low light conditions. And I said, you need to point your camera this way. And at about that moment, there was a beautiful red teardrop object that appeared. Ruby red light between the person next to me, who was a medical student, and this older gentleman who subsequently was healed by this ET. And the instant that appeared, he took the picture. But instead of seeing a ruby red light, the light detecting cells of these cameras captured the whole person. He's about 5 feet tall. And look at the eye sockets and the beak. Yeah, it's really cool. And this is an unretouched actual photo. So that was in our circle. And what happened over the course of that night, this person, ET, stayed around, didn't leave, but was not physical incarnate for, I guess, their own security and probably ours. We'll talk about that. But towards the end of the night, this older gentleman, Ed Moen, he stayed out there all night with this guy. And the object kept coming and going. Now, with his naked eye, he could just see this beautiful ruby red light, like a teardrop. And towards the end, he had to go to bed, and he just parenthetically said, "Could you help me with my hearing?" When he was a teenager, he had almost total hearing loss, could barely hear everything going on. And he went to bed and woke up with perfect hearing. Threw away his $5,000 hearing aids, everything. Now, this happened multiple times, actually. But so this being is, I call it the healer. I don't know his proper name and really don't care. To me, that's what his dharma. Dharma is your spiritual path of service and work. Right? Good word, dharma. Next. And these are just some other images of our CE5 group going out and capturing unusual craft. Some daytime. This is nighttime. Our Santa Barbara group out in the way outside Santa Barbara near Vineyards. Next. This just happened on here. It floated 2 nights ago. Superimposed where Aldebaran is. There is a craft here. I'll tell you what happened. It moved in from the left as a large ship. I thought, well, it was a huge airplane. And then it stopped. And unfortunately, there was this tree here, but it hovered here for 45 minutes at least. And I pointed it out. We were in deep meditation.
I'm sorry?
And I go, wait a minute. Something isn't right here. And then some people thought it might have been Betelgeuse, the star rising.
Can you see me?
And then we checked, Betelgeuse was below the horizon. And then this is going on and on and on. And somewhere on the 360 cameras, we have when it moved in, but we haven't retrieved it yet.
It's back.
Here, yeah. And towards the end, it moves to the right. And what it did, it starts glowing and pulsing, and then it dematerializes.
It's back.
Yeah, it was really close.
And now it's a little lower.
Yep. So this just happened 2 nights ago up there. So the reason I'm showing that is that someone said on Tuesday when we were getting ready to go out, they say, how often will something come when you're doing it? I said, we've never had a CE5 event where there hasn't been actual ET craft. Now, this particular event was particularly weird, and the reason for it, we were in deep meditation. We'd done the Puja, we were meditating, I had led the CE5 protocols, and we were just silent. And I was told, or got an intuition, to look up and to the right, because it was not in my line. I was looking due east, and this was more towards the northeast. And when it moved in, I said, looks like the mothership. No, I have military-grade night scopes, which are very nice. Very expensive. But I could see no nav lights, but I could see structure. So I said, well, this is really interesting. And then it sat there for over 45 minutes until it moved again and vanished in clear air. So and I felt it was an overwatch ship, meaning like overwatch and security is where you're overwatching an area for safety. And because in the field with us, there were all kinds of unusual ET phenomenon. Orbs that came on and off, lights that would appear and move over just in the clearing where we were, up in this wilderness area, the McDowell Mountain Regional Park, not far from here. And great site, by the way. Didn't you guys like it? Yeah? Very good site. So that's what happened. The first night we were out, Tuesday, what is this, Friday? Yeah, Tuesday, the first time this small group, 20 people went out, we had in the west-northwest, out where there's just empty, clear desert, 40 to 60 spheres and orbs appear in clear desert sky, would move in every kind of direction and vanish. And that is on our 360 cameras. We haven't had time to go in there and retrieve them. Hopefully tomorrow we can show you guys some of it. It's absolutely amazing. At least 40 or 50 over the course of, hour and a half maybe? Something like that. Excuse me. So just keep in mind there's so many ways, and we're going to go all weekend talking about all the different ways actual ET craft appear versus man-made phenomenon versus from other dimensions, okay? So what we want to do is understand that the main way that you make contact is in consciousness and coherent thought. Because, not that we don't have our lasers and our tones and our equipment and our sensors and all that, and our electronics. We have a whole bunch of electronics to pick up magnetic field changes, all that. And we'll show those things too when we're out under the stars tomorrow night. But the central, let's say, operating system is your own consciousness and mind. And the reason for that is that all interstellar civilizations, not ET civilizations that are fixed in their solar system, right? But ones that are interstellar, meaning they can go from point A in space to point B very quickly. They are not doing that at anything less than the speed of the speed of light's too slow. Because if, like Puja's, a galaxy is 2.5 million light years from here. It would take 2.5 million years to get here at the speed of light, or at the speed of this thing, right? What is this running off of? Radio waves, right? 1840s, 1844, Marconi's Hill. These are at the speed of light. But at the speed of light, you can barely even communicate back to Mars, because depending on where it is in its orbit, it can take an hour to get it, or half an hour to get a signal there, and another hour, half an hour back. By then, the unmanned rover has gone over the cliff. And we're talking our closest neighbor planet. So begin to think of the physics of why it is imperative. It isn't as if this is some touchy-feely seance thing, right? If you are interstellar, you are transdimensional. And if you're transdimensional, you have mastered the science of consciousness and thought and its applications, both within your innate ability, but also technologically. And see, and this is what I discovered when I was 18. Their their communication systems are interfacing as easy as we would use this to call home. They're using electromagnetic, but deeper than electromagnetic technologies that are in that transdimensional area to transmit information at multiples of the speed of light through a consciousness and thought interface with machine, right? That's what it is. To be really clear. I know it sounds very abstract, but it isn't. So imagine if you had something instead of, you could just think to this, and it does what you have thought, precisely, every time. That's their navigation systems, that's their spacecraft systems, that's their communication systems. And so when I discovered this, in 1973, I realized, wow, this is why so many people who have experiences with ETs have a part of it that's very consciousness and mind-oriented and spiritually oriented and whatnot, because their civilizations have come this way before us, and if they've survived where we are, geopolitically and technologically, without killing themselves, they are, a priori, peaceful, right? Because we're about to blow this planet up with nuclear weapons and things you'll hear about that are far more dangerous that are being used against the ETs. That's how we're shooting them down, crash retrievals. So you're going to hear about all that this weekend. But the ETs have passed that way before, right? And they're not hostile, but I will tell you, their largesse and patience is growing thin, very thin. And I've warned the White House and the Congress about this, and the Department of Defense, the guys who are the people not part of this illegal secret government program, which is everybody. I mean, everyone thinks, oh, the president, no, he didn't know anything. They don't know anything. Not to the extent he's gotten anything, he's still, it's a tragedy of our entire governance on the world, not just this country either, every country. So we're trying to fix that very quickly. But I want you to understand that consciousness, your mind, we think of it as fixed within our brains or something. No, your conscious self and your body of light manifests the physical one. We have it backwards. So primacy, the most important is the conscious mind itself. Now, most people think of consciousness as what you are conscious of. I'm not talking about that. Women study. It was raising consciousness about, equal rights for women. And that's different. I'm talking about the essence of consciousness, your mind, the capacity to be awake, right? So you're all awake right now, but think for a moment that even though you're each unique individuals, the mind, the stuff of awareness is one singularity. It is one field. It is never divided. Now, we divide ourselves from that infinite and unbounded aspect of mind, but when we connect to that in meditation or whatever we do to help us get centered and expand our awareness, that's how you can remote view. That's how you can see the future, the past, another star system, and see an ET craft, whether it's in the field dematerialized, under the earth, or out in space, 1 billion light years away, and connect to it at the speed of consciousness and thought, which is instantaneous. There is no time latency, no lag. And it is a real science. Now, this is, of course, what I'm most ridiculed for until pretty recently, and now people in the national security apparatus have realized that everything about that is true. I'm talking mainstream. Covert programs have known this since the 50s. And so it's beginning to dawn on people that maybe the old fart knew what he was talking about, but little by little. And it's acknowledged now within the highest intelligence and military circles that is absolutely true. And that capability is central to being able to understand these civilizations and also understand their, purpose. And the more you understand consciousness, the more you're going to be able to do the CE5 conscious protocols. Because with everything, and I tell people, when I was a kid and when I died, how I died and when I was 17 and all that, I had that beautiful experience, near-death experience. I mean, being that sick wasn't any fun, but I survived, and obviously here I am. But in the course of that near-death experience, I had an experience of cosmic consciousness, unity consciousness, like instantly. And what I realized because I was raised, my family were atheists, agnostic, and they didn't believe in anything, not in a test tube, full stop. So I had no foundation in my life for understanding any of this. But then you don't need it if you've experienced it. So I experienced it in its fullness. And I figured, wow, it'd be nice to have this state of unbounded mind and consciousness and all these things without dropping dead. So I decided to take a meditation course. And then I became a meditation teacher before I was a medical doctor, right? So that was my path. And so that's why I do this particular Sanskrit ceremony. You can do anything you want, but that's how I came into this. Yeah, it's hot in here, isn't it? Is the air conditioning broken? Or maybe have someone turn it down 5 degrees. So I think what we want to understand is when we go into a meditative state, any technique, I don't care if it's the one I'm teaching or one you've learned, it really should bring you to that point of inner unbounded peace and silence. And some people call it samadhi, nirvana. There are a lot of the beatific state in the early Christian era. You can be in that state. There are a billion ways to get there, right? I teach what I know, and that works, but you can make it your own. I just want to say up front, I'm not at all chauvinistic or bombastic about it. I look at each human soul and each ET person as a unique creation. So if there are 8 billion people on the planet, there are 8 billion totally unique universes, people. But the center, it'd be like on the vast wheel of life that you see that picture. And in the very center of it is this infinite field of pure, quiet consciousness that is where we're all one in spirit. It's an awake field without differentiation. It's without parts and pieces, and it is indivisible, and it is also omnipresent anywhere in space-time or other dimensions. We'll get into the other dimensions. So when you understand that, then you can traverse dimensions, you can traverse worlds, you can go beyond the limits of space-time, and that is, to me, the beginning of being a CE5 ambassador, right? Because that, when you've understood and begun to experience that, then you have the ability to utilize your own consciousness. So all these 8 billion, individuals are like spokes in the hub of the wheel of life. They go to the hub, the inner part. And that's where we all are one. But beyond that, we're all infinitely different, whether we be human or whether we be ETs or whatever, or beings from another dimension. Now, what we're going to be doing is dealing with the ones who are from other extraterrestrial, from other star systems. But other dimensional beings may attend. Your great-grandmother, a being from another realm. So this is where we're going to go really deep into the cosmos. And I don't mean, the fake cosmos that only astronomers know about, right? Linear space-time. But the fullness of the multiverse, the universe as it really is, that is infinite and has multiple dimensions, all of which is emanating from the same singularity of consciousness, pure mind. And when you go into that state, then you can see anywhere. And as you practice it, you can affect anything. This is where you get into these abilities. We've heard of people materializing objects or levitating or whatever. And those are real. Those are considered the gifts and the powers in ancient Judeo-Christian tradition, but in the Vedic, they're called siddhis, S-I-D-D-H-I-S, siddhis. And we'll teach you some of those this weekend. And so when you get to that point in meditation where that begins to get more and more open to you, that infinite field, then when you're doing your daily business, you can start experiencing it and then applying the science of consciousness in specific ways. In a sense, in a very real way, CE5 contact protocols, that whole training is a siddhi, S-I-D-D-H. It's an ability and it's an extension of mind, matter, interaction, and consciousness as a specific skill set for the purpose of inviting these civilizations to make contact with us, but only for peaceful purposes and unselfish purposes on our part. So we're not trying to acquire their technologies. We're not trying to shoot them down. We're not trying to get anything selfish. The extent to which you are pure-hearted, and I will use the word, although it's not fashionable, selfless, they're interested. Because they know you're willing to put yourself at service to the world and humanity and to the cosmos, as opposed to going out to see a UFO and be entertained, like you pay an admission to go to SeaWorld and see dolphins, right? That's not what this is, my friends. So CE5 contact, it involves some technologies that we're using that are very simple, but the central technology is the science of consciousness and mastering your own consciousness and mind and then applying it in this specific way to invite and make contact with any and all interstellar civilizations capable of reaching Earth. Sometimes we'll make contact with ones that are planetary bound. They're not advanced enough to even get here, and we'll see them, and there'll be some interactions. But they're not going to get here in a spacecraft. So that is another layer of interesting contact that we can talk about. But the ones that are interstellar and are cleared to interact with Earth in a 3D way, which is you are cleared, you're not coming in here willy-nilly, those are the ones that we want to say, hey, not all of us are ignorant of you, and not all of us are denying that you are there, and not all of us are sociopaths trying to shoot you down and kill you, right? And the reason that's so important, what is the face of humanity being shown to the ETs? Think about it. Think about it. Started knocking them out of the skies in at least the 30s or 40s. Started blowing up where they had places in the earth and under the oceans, exterminating, quote unquote, them. Over the last, even since the 80s, there have been probably at least 1,000 extraterrestrial vehicles downed with the beings, either captured alive and tortured, and we know where some of those are being held that need to be liberated, or been killed and then experimented on. And this is a fact. So, and then you have your main governments, what we call the governments. I'm talking about there's a shadow secret government doing that horrible stuff, and then you have the president and the Congress and 10 Downing Street and Canada and Australia and the whole mythology of who runs the world when they don't. There's another group runs the world, whether you like it or not, on anything dealing with this. Maybe on ordinary things they're allowed to play. But on the things that really matter, they do not control those operations. They're not cleared. That is why some people have called this whole operation deep black, above top secret, all that stuff. You can call it what you will. It's an unsanctioned, illegal operation that's the world's largest criminal, violent group. And that's what we're doing, taking on. Very dangerous, by the way. So what we're doing as CE5 ambassadors is saying, hey, we're awake. We understand this technology that you have that interfaces with thought and consciousness, and they have their innate abilities like we do. And they're highly telepathic people, all of them, all the civilizations. But they also have augmentation. So we have what I call consciousness-assisted technology, where your mind assists, say, this thing to do something. But they also have technologies that augment and assist their consciousness and thought. So it goes both ways. It's TAC and CAT, which I wrote a whole paper on that in 1991. And it went through the CIA and the aerospace companies, and I got contacted by a PhD at McDonnell Douglas that later became part of Boney. He says, how do you know this? This is the most accurate thing any of us have ever read. You're not supposed to know any of that. I said, well, I'm just nobody. I'm an emergency and trauma doctor in North Carolina, banging around in the ER with 4 daughters and a golden retriever. And I said, well, I learned it when I was contacted when I was 18 and went on board a craft, and all this was very clear to me, and this is what we're doing. And the guy, of course, it turned out that was Dr. Robert Woods, one of our disclosure witnesses who's passed away, who worked for McDonald of McDonnell Douglas and worked closely with the chairman, the head of McDonnell Douglas. So that knowledge of TAC, technology-assisted consciousness, and consciousness-assisted technology is how their craft operate, their guidance systems, their communication systems. This is not to say they don't have innate abilities like you and I do, but they have this other. And that's why if you're in that state of consciousness and very clear, with a clear mind and a clear intent, and what we call coherent thought sequencing, you make contact with them and like a laser, or Google Earth, you show them and vector them straight into where you are, out in the desert or at your home, wherever you live. And it works, and it's not difficult. People make it more difficult. So that is the essence of what we're doing with CE5 Contact. Now, I do want to mention this, because I think, when I go into, I know 4 years or so ago, I was asked to go into the Senate Intelligence Committee SCIF. A SCIF is a secure compartmented information facility, because they were trying to find out about this stuff and were hitting their head on walls nonstop. And what happened was that the very first thing I said is, let's get clarity here. You're calling these UAPs, UFOs, alien, NHI is the pop thing now that they made up a term, non-human intelligence. I go, well, non-human intelligence, dolphins, cetaceans, beings from other dimensions, not extraterrestrial, from other star systems, on and on. I said, this is a meaningless categorization. So this is where you're going to see the doctor part of me about this. Very specific knowledge, very specific words and concepts, because if you muddle them together, you're going to be lost in this cosmology, because it's a huge cosmos. This is elemental. So I went in and I said, hey, these things are, some of them are extraterrestrial biological entities. This is what they used to be called EBINs. So an EBIN is from a star system and a planet with a spacecraft, but they traverse other dimensions when they dematerialize out of linear space-time to go from point A to B 1 million light years in space, right? Because they're going beyond the speed of matter, electrons, and light. So they've mastered trans-dimensional quantum entanglement, but on a consciousness level as well as a material level, scientific level. That's what you need to understand about that. But then there are these things that are from literally other dimensions. So they don't originate from a planet, they originate from another dimension, and they can pop into 3D. Bigfoot's an example, right? It's not an ET, it's not Earth-based, but there are interfaces between other dimensions and linear space-time where they can, at certain vectors, let's say, and frequencies, they can pop in. True. I was recently talking to a member of Congress, House Oversight Committee, and he had heard something, and I said, look, I've worked with scientists that can have something on a table like this, like a toroidal donut-shaped vortex, and hit a certain frequency where they can tap into another dimension and have a weird creature that looks like it was pulled out of the ninth ring of hell physically materialize and run around the lab. Sounds unbelievable? It isn't. And it's been done, and accidentally and on purpose. That's what Montauk was with that weird thing that got loose years ago. And that, what I'm just saying here, that whole fictional show, I gave lectures years ago about this, and they did a show called Stranger Things. When I started talking about the really weird stuff, I never saw it. I think isn't that the name of it? It was a Netflix show, I think. I don't look at these shows. But it was clear that that was being mixed up with extraterrestrial. And then the biggest one is the fact that 80% or more of the UAP, UFOs seen are man-made. But they are so sophisticated. They've gone from pretty clunky things in the late 50s, early 60s. And you'll see some of these, like the alien reproduction vehicle that's in our new book that we came forward with in 2001 that looks like, but it's very clearly a man-made kind of disc and bell-shaped object. And that thing in the late 50s, early 60s had all been through around our solar system. Was an interstellar. Wasn't able to go beyond the speed of light, but it was anti-gravity, electrogravitic. So we mastered that science in October 1954. Take it to the bank. That was when we mastered it. Now, we were playing around with it in World War II. That's what Adolf Hitler had. He had a disc that wasn't stable, and we got it and brought it back, along with Herman Oberth and Werner von Braun and all the Operation Paperclip geniuses that we didn't execute because we wanted to know what they knew, right? You all know that story, history? There's a whole book called Operation Paperclip. So now we're at this point where you have 80 years, 70 years of man-made, very advanced technologies that we innately stumbled across in the 20s and 30s. If you look at the movie The Lost Century, which I recommend you all do, that we released a couple years ago. But that then began to be greatly supercharged by studying downed extraterrestrial vehicles that we learned how to down with electromagnetic pulse weapons and scalar weapons. That's what Roswell was. Roswell was not an accident, an electrical storm. Huge electrical storm here last night. We saw so many jets flying into the airports. We have a pilot captain here. I mean, the idea you're going from interstellar distances and can't navigate a thunderstorm in New Mexico is ridiculous. Talk about an anthropocentric projection. We're projecting our own stupidity on these beings. So let's stop. No, come on. With a scintilla of common sense here, man. But the technologies that are so advanced now that many of the people who are in the Delta Force and other operations will admit that the man-made ones are almost indistinguishable from an ET one. They're very advanced, which is why we have to know enough to know what we're doing when we're out under the stars together. Because is it a fake one, a man-made one, a real one? Same thing with the aliens. When I say, I don't use the word alien, aside from the fact it's a xenophobic, racist term, it means nothing. Because aliens are being used to describe beings from other dimensions, extraterrestrial biological entities, and the man-made aliens that are used in deceptive operations, right? So that's why we go through all this. So you need to understand these three main categories. Now within that, there are a whole bunch of others, and we'll get into that later. This is just your foundational introduction here, right? And next one is very important. We'll review this other times. And this is the holographic conscious universe. And I don't know if you can read it. Can you guys read that? Oh, good. Usually it's not. We tried to change it. But in the very center of it is the pure unbounded consciousness being. It's infinite. But then as it begins to differentiate, you have a realm, let's call it, or a dimension that's pure thought, the sound aspect, the vibration of thought. That precedes the light. And that then precedes and creates what we call the worlds of light. Some call them astral. There are all kinds of names, of which there are an infinite number of variations and gradations of density and what have you. A lower astral aspect, some would call hell. The highest would be celestial heaven. There are all kinds of religious terms that are not scientific, but that we understand in our culture, human culture. And what's very important about this, it goes all the way to, where you get into the 3D cosmos, which is that outer part, right? The blue, purple. But in between and within, let's look at it this way. Everything that's in this graphic, if you memorize it, is enfolded within everything else. It's a holographic conscious universe. A hologram means that, if you look at a hologram, any part of that hologram, if you zoom in on it, has the totality, and the totality. So that's why every one of us has all of this folded within us by virtue that we're conscious, and we can experience everything from the unbounded mind in deep meditation to every one of these dimensions, all of them. Because, as the old Persian saying goes, thinkest thyself a puny form when within thee the universe is folded. Literally, the entirety of the creation and universe is folded within each conscious being, but not at the level of their ego and superficiality, at this deep level of this unbounded ocean of mind. And that's where we're going to be going every day and every night. That's the journey. Sound fun? Now, the reason I think this is something for you to meditate on, this particular slide, is as we go through this whole weekend, tonight, tomorrow, Sunday, all the way till midnight on Sunday night, is that it's really important to keep in mind, because we always get pulled back into the ourselves and our egos, which is fine, but we then forget. This is a great remembering. It's been called that. You're remembering who you really are, what is really within you. And this totality of the cosmos is folded within each person. So really, when you're in a deep meditative state and you find yourself suddenly out at, the Andromeda galaxy or something, you didn't go anywhere. You went within, and within, at that level of consciousness, is the ultimate quantum entangled state. So quantum entanglement, I'll just define it real quickly. It's when every point in space and time is connected to every other, instantaneously, non-linearly. And that's been documented for a century. This is why one of the early particle physicists and quantum mechanics physicists, Ernst Schrödinger, said in 1908, the total number of minds in the universe is one. That is, it is a singularity. Beautiful. As a physicist, not a mystic. But if you know physics well enough, it crosses into what people call spiritual or metaphysical or what have you. And we're going to have to begin to live in a time where we accept all of the above, right? We integrate that deep spiritual and consciousness knowledge with everyday lives and also everyday physics and activity. Because those civilizations that we're contacting here, out here in the desert of Arizona on this beautiful Native American land, they understand all that. And we have to at least get part way to understanding what they understand to have a relationship, to have communication, to understand who and what they are. And also, operationally, to be able to know how to invite them and guide them into where we are. Someday, humans will have technologies used peacefully to augment or to support that process, the technology-assisted consciousness techs. A man who was a genius who in 1956 invented a headset. Well, not too different from this. You just don't wear these. Is it weird? I always feel stupid wearing these. But what he in 1956, and he had a headset that would assist you going into a state, a frequency of consciousness, so you could instantaneously remote view and see places. But a group called, a company, a front company for the agency, CIA, called Alpha Metric Corporation, bought it. But he still knew how to make it. This is like in '91. He says, would you like one? I said, if I have that, I'm a dead man for sure. No, thank you. But that's real, and that's 1956. So whatever you think we have way more. Now imagine that all that amazing technology, instead of being used by a corrupt and criminal clandestine operation, is used to benefit humanity and save the planet and end poverty and assist with the course of enlightenment that we are all on. That's why disclosure is important. So we're doing multiple things. CE5 contact and disclosure, and the third is trying to put together people who can help us bring out the technologies that would terminate the entire current energy system. If you look at the lost century, really all that's needed is sufficient funding, but it's way past anything I have the ability to apply or raise. I mean, it's tens of millions at a minimum. Now, there are some brilliant scientists who have reached out and said, look, if you can get support, we can build them that have defecting from major corporations, right? But we need, that's a very risky undertaking, a very expensive one. So if you know anyone who's actually an investor, venture capitalist who wants to do it, they should see the lost century and then contact me immediately. I was just texting one of these genius scientists right before I came over here. And that's the salvation of the biosphere and the ending of poverty for our children and grandchildren, right? We're ready to do it. It's all ready to go. But you know, nothing happens by itself. Wishful thinking won't get you there. You have to be in a state of consciousness, have the right thought, and then have followed up, you know, in your speech, but then action. It takes action. So CE5 contact is about action. It's about having masses of people. So we're going to have, what, 350, 300 people out in the desert, all in a meditative state, and visualizing and manifesting this good future, pulling it out of the death spiral we put the earth in due to the idiocy of the last century. We can do it. And when more people do it, it's more powerful. You know, the old saying, those who work, God loves those who work together. But when you're doing this, even scientifically, they found by studying Dr. John at Princeton, who did the random number generators, he's an engineering guy at Princeton who passed away. I knew him way back in the 90s. And they had systems where you could literally, you know, put your mind on a random number generator, spitting out zeros and ones, and if you intended for it to put out more ones, it would shift the bell curve. So instead of an even distribution, it would be shifted. But if you had a group of people who were coherent, or two people that loved each other, the force of love and unity and oneness, it was not arithmetic. It wasn't twice as much, it was exponential. So there's an exponential potentiation when all we come together and go into a state of consciousness, and with great positive energy manifest that new world. And it also picks up a disturbance in the force. It's a positive ripple in the force of the infinite mind that the ETs pick up. But it also affects our fellow humans. They've done studies where people who are, a lot of meditators go to a town, and the town suddenly has a drop in crime and emergency room visits and everything else. And the reason for that is that it's a coherent field that is non-local, quantum entangled. And therefore, it affects everyone, even if you're doing it. So all of us doing this is actually very beneficial, not only to the Earth and our relationship in the future with extraterrestrial civilizations, but our fellow humans. It's actually very beneficial. And it has that effect once you understand this holographic conscious universe. And that's why everyone has more ability within them than they realize. And this is not to create an egotistical state. It's actually to be enlightened and realize that it's not coming from your individuality, but it's pouring through you because you are plugged into this infinite being, the Great Spirit, all the time. And you don't have to be religious to realize this, or a religion, or an organized religion. You have to understand the science of consciousness. And that can be from any tradition. I don't care, any tradition. I've studied every religious tradition in the world, and I've read every holy book in the world. And when you boil it down and take out all the variations, the deep spiritual truths are actually also totally aligned. But of course, people like fighting over them just because they want to be superior over the other person. It's about, the human foible of wanting to get over on other people and divide people. And this is what demagoguery is about, whether it's political or religious. They want everyone to hate each other, and in doing so, the demagogues and the people in the center of power get more power, right? You know the story of the native people, the Maori of New Zealand, the way the British, when they were conquering New Zealand, they actually staged something of one Maori tribe doing something against another, so that the Maori would fight each other so they could swoop in during that and take over. You just figured out most political, demagogic, divisive isms, wars, and everything. That's the playbook. It ain't hard to figure out. Sometimes the simplest things are right in front of you, and that is how it is done. So we have to kind of get more enlightened where we're not fooled by that anymore, right? The only way to do that is to get into a state of consciousness where you can see the Truman Show. You all see that movie, The Truman Show? I love that, with Jim Carrey. And he wakes up one day and realizes he's on a set. That's what this is. Okay? Well, the world around us is a Truman Show. And we can wake up and see the reality around us. And that's part of what we're doing here this weekend, to the extent we can attain it. The other really important thing to always remember is that if you are awake and are a human being, or ET, being from another world, you're awake and conscious. And it is to become aware of the consciousness itself. It's about just stop your perceptions, your thoughts, and reflect on the fact that you're awake, and go deeper and deeper into reflecting on that mindfulness. It's that simple. I can do it driving down the highway. I did it in the ER when I'm putting in a chest, whatever. So once you master that, you are in touch with that all the time. And you also receive information that way. So you can learn things externally, but you can also learn very accurately information internally. Not only remote viewing places, but knowledge and information can come from within. And then they be verified externally. Right? We're going to do some of these exercises Saturday and Sunday. We're going to teach you some of these techniques and remote viewing exercises, and with a control, so you'll know what it is, right? And this is something you can do at home. It's your own CE5 contact group. And if you do it, and you do it regularly, it will blossom. So keep in mind, everything that we do, if it works, if we mastered it, it's because we didn't just do it once and move on. It's perseverance, it's diligence, it's doing it regularly. And that is very true of meditation and the science of consciousness practice, but it's also very true of CE5 contact. The more you do it, you just get into a state, and we're going to spend the next hour in a minute doing this whole process, but you can do it in 30 seconds, 90 seconds, a minute, a couple minutes. So you can stop, center, connect, see, and connect, and guide, and just have it happen. You're just in a flow state. So I liken this, the first time you go someplace where there's a lot of travel and there's a twists and turns and this and that. First time you go, it seems laborious. Second time, it's a little easier. The 100th time, you're not even thinking about it. It's automaticity. There's an automatic skill set that's been ingrained, and you just can go, right? You all have had this experience. Think of this as the same way, but you have to get to that certain point of mastery by doing it enough, and this takes discipline, which I know is also not very popular. You know what else isn't popular? Reading. Nobody reads. It's very politically incorrect to read a book. But I joke a lot. You know, if you're too serious, you're going to have a very hard time this weekend. My daughters hit me and say, "Daddy, stop." But you guys hear a beep? You sure your cell phones are off for alarms? But I think that you have to believe in yourself. So before we do the Puja meditation, you have to believe you can do it. And, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I used to talk to, there was a remote viewer for the agency, CIA way back, named Ingo Swann. And I got to know him and was up at his place in New York. Have you guys heard of Ingo Swann? He wrote a book called Penetration. Not what you're thinking of, Dirty Minds. And a lot of people hear that going, "Oh, no, really?" Get your mind out of the gutter. And you know what he told me? He said he so regretted that he had wasted his aptitude and abilities with the CIA, and that he so wished he'd done something like the path I was on. He was much, much older than me, and he admired what we were doing. And he and I would talk about this, that everyone thinks it's difficult. It's just that they don't believe they can do it. And if you believe you can do it, you will. If you don't believe you can, you won't. So that state of positive, "Oh, I can do this," makes you able to do it, right? And if you have this little gremlin on your shoulder, this part of your negative thought self going, "Oh, I can't do it, I'm a blob, I'm a housewife from Chandler, or I'm a whatever," you won't. So there's another great old expression, "As ye have faith, so shall your powers and blessings be." But they're not talking about faith and blind belief. They're talking this positive knowingness of something not yet attained. Right? So even if you want to be a doctor or an airline pilot, you have to believe you can do it. Right? And so this is the same thing. You need to understand it, but then you have to affirm to yourself that it's a God-given gift for every conscious being in the universe, and every single person can and will attain all these states of higher consciousness, but also abilities. And most of the time, we hold ourselves back by repeating this negative tape that we simply can't. So we have to sort of believe in ourselves, and that's the hardest thing, is to accept yourself, believe in yourself, forgive yourself, and then have fun. Make it fun and playful. So I do all kinds of tricks with this. Haven't had a ticket in 40 years. I'm always radar ahead of where the highway patrol, because I drive too fast. Shh. Shh. You can do all kinds of things. That's the silly one. But you can do other things that are like just for everyday life. The phone, when I wake up in the morning, before I look at I always turn my phone off, but when I wake up, before I look at my text messages, I will sense what text messages are in there from whom and how many. Right? It's not hard to do. And you just begin to practice that. It's not guessing, sensing, feeling. So the mind, consciousness is infinite, but we have something called also the heart, and so do these other species. And the heart, the center of love, the physical heart literally has neurons. There's the Heart Math Institute and all that. But physically, we have neurons in our heart. And so the heart and the mind resonating together, it supercharges this capability. When you sync up, so it's not just intellect and mind, it's the mind and the heart together. And that's where you get the most accurate remote views or intuitions or knowledge. And you can feel it. And so, one of the many things in the ER happened over my career. I probably saw 70,000 people. We each back then had to see 6,000 patients a year in a high-volume trauma emergency setting. Brutal. Anyway, one day, this boy came in, young man, like 26, 2 kids, it's flu season, and I went in, and the nurse had put him in just a regular medical room, And when I got free, because I was dealing with a cardiac arrest, I go in and ask me, I have the flu. And he had fever, nausea, sweats. It was flu season in the winter. And other people in his family had the influenza. And I looked at him, and I felt and saw. You know how dogs sense things? Kind of like a dog. I'm like a golden retriever or something. Love dogs. So intuitive. And I just saw he had a brain tumor. So I turned to the nurse. I said, I want a CAT scan of the brain. And she goes, in North Carolina, she goes, well, doctor, he's just got the flu. I said, just do it. That was my mantra, just to get done. And I get an emergency call back from the radiologist, and he's got an astrocytoma. It's like a pancake tumor that had gotten to a size where it was pushing his brain, the midbrain, down through the foramen magnum, hitting all those key areas for temperature regulation, the chemotactic trigger zone. I won't go into the neuroscience. So all of his symptoms were from this brain tumor, but he had no other neurological findings. And if I hadn't followed my intuition, and thank God there wasn't some money-grubbing fool at the hospital or insurance company or the government saying I couldn't get that CAT scan, because he did not check any of the boxes for ordering that thing. That man would have died within 12 hours. But he went to neurosurgery, and he's fine. He used to come into the ER with his kids. I said, now, a funny part of this, because, the nurses called me a warlock. Dr. Greer's a warlock. Yeah. All right, whatever. Thank God I went to meditation, teacher training, and all that before I went into medicine. Gave me a good foundation. But the neurosurgeon called me. He said, how did you even know to get a CAT scan? I would have never ordered it. But I didn't say, I saw it in my mind and felt it in my heart and just knew. And, because I'd lose my medical license probably. Yeah, you would. So I just said, I just had a hunch. He said, good call. I said, yeah, that's a true story. So there are, the science of consciousness, when you master this ability, it honestly, it lights up so much of your life, your work, your family, all kinds of things. It doesn't mean you're infallible. I mean, I make mistakes all the time. But it means that you have a guiding capability, and it increases your ability for having guidance from not only your intellect and knowledge, but inside, your inner guidance. And that's why doing this is beneficial, not only for contacting extraterrestrial civilizations who utilize their own consciousness and technologies doing CE5 contact, but it also is very beneficial to your life on a day-to-day, ordinary basis, and could save your life someday. So it's a great thing to do, and it's very healthy, and it's fun. That's the other thing. Always make it loads of fun. It's serious, but I'm a bit of a cut-up, and very inappropriate sometimes. Joke and cut up and carry on, and people go, oh my God, but you have to understand, I grew up in a 2-room shack with no heat, no air conditioning in North Carolina. And my African American girlfriend we thought was so rich in high school because her father delivered letters for the post office. Yeah, that was bougie, right? That was up there. So we really were urchins left on the street, very poor. So I say, look, out of that background I came out of, and I have put myself through high school washing pots and pans at a Red Lobster, and then put myself through college and med school, right? So, if someone like me who came from the worst deprived, my dad was Native American background in the South, anyone can do this. And that's why I tell people, there's nothing special about me. And Ingo Swann and I used to say all the time, there's nothing special. We're just simply willing to do it. We're willing to believe and see we can do it. And because we believe and see we can do it, we can do it. Now, you do have abilities that expand and keep getting better. But the starting point is please believe you can do it. And you believe in yourself. And relax. It'll happen. Right? Very good. All right, so what we're going to do next, we're going to do a Puja meditation. So I want to introduce this. Now, I know a lot of people, what the heck is this? I'm going to put this over here. Ooh, I put it on my broken foot. So this is, I'll just explain this. This is just a picture of the ascended enlightened masters that brought the science of consciousness to Earth. And this is from the Vedas. The Vedas predate Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity. It's an ancient body of philosophical knowledge. And it is the primary source for really understanding, in my opinion, the science of consciousness. But it's very esoteric for some people. But I learned all this when I was 18, 19. And then when I was 19, 20, became a meditation teacher. And this is what a ceremony we do. And it's really what it is honoring those beings, earthly and non-earthly, that have brought the knowledge of consciousness and enlightenment and higher states of consciousness to the earth for hundreds of thousands of years. And it is hundreds of thousands of years. It's not recent. So it's just a ceremony that does that. Now, it's all in Sanskrit, so you're not going to understand a word. I know it, but I had to master that. But the idea about Sanskrit, it's thought to be the original Indo-European language, the root of all Indo-European languages. And it's also known in the mystical literature to be name and form, that the vibration of the word for water in Sanskrit, achmaniyam, you can meditate and materialize water. Now, you can do that with any language, but it's considered to be the most efficient. So the whole thing is in Sanskrit. It takes about 15 minutes. It's beautiful. And then at the end of it, I will sit and I'll teach you a breathing meditation technique, and then I'm going to give you a mantra. Now, some of you know it, have it already, but if you don't, I'm still going to go through that and teach it, and then we're going to sit in silence and meditate. At the end of the meditation, quiet time, I will do a guided, the next phase of it is when you're in a centered and calm space, to then put yourself where you can then say, okay, now that I'm in touch with this conscious field, and you affirm that it's everywhere, infinite, and then intend, not force. Remember, force is the inverse of power. Power is blossomed from within. Force is like this, hammering, doesn't work. It's this light intending to see a remote place in space that your heart is drawn to, where the ET craft may be, what worlds. And you may end up 1 billion light years from here, or you may end up 100 yards out in the desert and see something out there, right? Doesn't matter. Because remember, space doesn't exist in that field of consciousness. It's omnipresent. It's everywhere. It's unbounded. So that's what we're going to do towards the end, and then we'll wrap it up about 10, and then we're going to party. There's a VIP party. So, and hopefully don't get too much. You'll fall in the pool. The hotel said, well, you know, they better be careful. They could fall into the pool. I said, well, I'll jump in and get you out. So the puja is what we'll do first. And so, Lara, you want to come help? So this will be a ceremony. Now, I will take my shoes off. You don't have to. And then at the end, I will sit over. I don't know the best place to sit. I didn't want you to be blocked, but I'll probably sit over here doing the meditation, quiet meditation. Your eyes will be closed anyway, so this should be okay. Everybody ready? Yeah? Good. So please stand. Ooh, not yet. Oh, new one. Good. Lara is wonderful at helping with this. I'm just adjusting the locations of things. We like sandalwood incense. So let us go into quiet mind together and allow yourself just to rest your consciousness on the intonation and the frequency of the puja, because all the words are Sanskrit, and in many ways each word is its own mantra, which is the sound aspect of thought, and specialized ones can bring you to this unbounded state of mind very efficiently. I'm tall. Apavitra pavitro va sarva vastanga topiva yasmarik pundarik kaksham sabaya bhyantara sushi avahanam Narayanam Padma Bhavam Vashishtam Shaktim Chatatputra Paracharamcha Vyasam Shukam Gauda Mahantantam Govinda Hoyinda Mahashalatam Sri Shankaracharya Matasya Padma Padam Chahasta Malakam Chashisham Tam Trotikam Vartika Karumanyan Asmad Gurun Santatamana Tosmi Shruti Smrti Parananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutravasha Krito Vande Bhagavanto Puna Puna Yadvai Nikila Nilimpa Parishad Siddhim Varatenisham Shrimachari Lasitam Jagad Guru Param Natvatma Triptim Gata Loka Gyan Pyo Patandaram Shri Shankaram Sharmadam Brahmanadam Sarvatim Guru Varam Dhyayami Joyaltir Mayam Avahanam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Asanam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Sananam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Vastram Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Chandanam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Ashkatan Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Pushpam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Dupam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Deepam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Akshmaniyam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Naivedjam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Akshmaniyam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Tambulam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Shri Palam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Arartikyam Karpurakaram Karunavataram Samsara Saram Bhujagendraharam Saravasantam Hridayara Vinde Bhavam Bhavani Sahitam Namami Arartikyam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Akshmaniyam Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamale Pyo Nama Apushpanjalim Guru Brahma Guru Vishnur Guru Devo Maheshvara Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama. Akanda Mandalakaram Vyattam Yeno Characharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yeno. Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama. Shri Brahmanadam Param Sukharam Kevalam Gyan Burtim Vishvatitam Gagan Sadrisham Tatvapmatasya Laksham Ekam Nipilam Vimalamashalam Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Triguna Sahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami Agyan Timriyan Dasya Gyananjan Shalakaya Shaksurum Itom Yeno Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama. Pushpanjalim Samarpami Shri Guru Charan Kamalepyo Nama. Now let us be seated in silent meditation together. So let's close our eyes, please. And now let us take some deep breaths, in with our nose and out with our mouth. Deeply in with your nose, out with your mouth fully. And with each inward breath, see that your conscious mind is awakened and enlivened, and you are filled with light and energy, the prana, chi, life force of the breath. And you see your whole mind and body filled with this life force and energy and awakeness. And then as you exhale, exhale fully and become deeply relaxed and release all of your stress and limitations as you exhale into the purifying breath of Mother Earth. And so with each inward breath, you become more and more awake and aware of the conscious mind. And you're filled with energy and light. And with each exhalation, you become more peaceful and relaxed from your feet to your head, letting go of all limitations, all concerns, in a deep, quiet state. Now being settled in this quiet state of mind and breathing normally, I will share the mantra, which consists of 3 syllables. And the first one is a perfect fifth in tonality higher than the other 2. And normally it is never spoken except when teaching or checking the mantra. I'm Nama, I'm Nama, I'm Nama, I'm Nama, I'm Nama, I'm Nama. The first syllable is I am, as in mother. The second syllable is na, N as in Nancy, A. And the last syllable is ma, as in mother, A, H. And the three syllables are one mantra. I'm Nama, 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 I'm Nama. So then, after acknowledging that the mantra can help you lightly focus, we just think the mantra, and we think it in any speed. It can be fast, slow, soft, loud, mentally. Doesn't matter. It's whatever is comfortable. And so the idea is that we don't force it. And at some point, as you're lightly focusing on the mantra, you may become distracted with other thoughts, noises, perceptions. This is totally normal. And instead of forcing those away and straining, acknowledge that you are perceiving those other perceptions, including your own thoughts. And don't push them away, but begin to see that you are awake, and that's how you perceive them. And then return to the perception of the mantra and allow yourself to settle into quieter and quieter states, going back and forth like that. And as you do, become aware gently of the fact that you are awake, and the awake mind is perceiving the mantra. And then see that that conscious mind is not bound by space or time, but is infinite and eternal and pre-existing and indivisible. It cannot be divided into parts, although that's what each of us have been trained to do. Now we are learning to have that state of oneness, where we see the light of consciousness is the same light shining through an infinite number of windows of each of our souls, both here on earth and throughout the cosmos. So I will be silent, and let us think the mantra and meditate for about 10 or 15 minutes together in silence. affirm to yourself that the quiet mind that you have been experiencing can be deepened as we go together into this infinite ocean of conscious light. Feel with your heart the conscious light of those in the room around us, each person. And see that they are all awake by the same singular field of consciousness, illuminating each of us in our own unique way. But that the consciousness itself is a singularity. And so we are all one people, deep within this conscious spirit. And now we allow ourselves to perceive directly with our third eye, our inner sight, that the space in this room and above this building and beneath the earth is all consciousness resonating and phasing as that thing. And that everything is consciousness at a frequency manifesting dimensions and matter, but in the depths of its essence, it is all awake. All of it. And we see that this conscious mind within ourselves is in fact infinite. It is not bound by time or space, but it is present at every point in time and space, where it can never be divided. Connecting to that aspect of the conscious mind within us, let us rise upward above this building into the sky and see with your inner sight and feel with your heart the beauty of the earth spreading out around us, and to the west and south, the vast metropolis of the Phoenix area, and to the east and north, the large areas of wilderness and sacred native land. And as we rise further up into the sky, we see the curvature of the earth. And as we go up above the atmosphere, we see the entirety of the earth, a beautiful blue planet. And as we gaze outward into space, and we see Father Sky with an infinite number of worlds, stars, and planets. And all of this is folded within each of us. And as we gaze across the earth, from further and further up into space, we can feel that the earth herself is a conscious being. Although not human, she is awake, and she is female. And so Mother Earth has given us life. And so we send love to the earth as we vow to heal her and to fix the damage we humans have done. And so we express our love and ask the forgiveness of the earth. And then we rise further into space. And we see the moon. And towards the sun, Venus and Mercury. And looking outward, Mars and the outer planets. And the beauty of the rings of Saturn. And the vastness of Jupiter. And as we see this, we see that it is all consciousness. It's a cosmic mind. And we are floating in this vast ocean of both consciousness and space. And wheresoever we gaze, we can see with our intent. And so now we see with a clear mind and a pure heart any of our friends from other star systems who have found their way to this part of the cosmos. And let your heart and your mind be drawn wherever you intuitively feel. And it may be out in the desert near us, out by the moon, underneath the surface of Mars, outside our solar system. And so we expand our minds as all-encompassing and allow ourselves to be guided to any being from another star system and planet who is physical, but also as we are, conscious and spiritual. And if at any point you have a sense, a knowledge of, or an image visually of a spacecraft or a world or a person or a group of people who are not human, introduce yourself by name as a friend and an ambassador from humanity to them and to their people. And then invite them to this beautiful planet for the purpose of universal peace. And so we show them our location. And wheresoever you find yourself in space, even in the depths of other galaxies, when you connect to or see or feel an ET craft or person or group or planet, show them the Earth, the third planet from our star, the sun. And for those of you at home, you can zoom in and show them your location. For those of us here, we will show them the North American continent, which is in the darkness of night. But with this celestial vision, you can see it as if it is broad daylight. And then you show them the southwest deserts, and then the vast metropolis of Phoenix. And going out to the edge of that metropolis, going east and north, this resort at Wikopa and the desert around us. And so we invite them to appear in any way that it is safe and appropriate for this group, this place, and this time. And we recognize that it may be in a spacecraft, a sphere, an energy field, a thought, a physical body, a light. There are an infinite number of ways they may choose to appear, depending on the safety of the moment and the place. And so we ask them to be here in any way that they choose, and that we are awake and are perceptive, and that we can understand them no matter how they wish to be here. And as we do this process, if at some point you have a very specific person or a message that they are giving you, be open to it and receive it and make note of it. And so as we go deeper into this process, into infinite inner space and infinite outer space, we see it as actually one. There's no separation. And so we may traverse the cosmos as free as a bird that has been released from its cage. And now we are free and we are enlightened. And so I will sit silently with you for a few minutes and practice this technique of becoming aware of the conscious mind and then allowing yourself to use it to traverse any world, any place, and with clarity see and receive messages, but also to invite as an ambassador to the universe from Earth all these beings to come as we welcome them to Earth. At this point in the transformation of the Earth, where humanity will be part of the cosmic family for hundreds of thousands of years. Now affirm to yourself that even as we begin to open our eyes, you can stay connected to this deep and quiet aspect of your own consciousness, the transcendent and pure mind within each of us. And so as we go into the world and do our normal activities, we can return and connect to this deep and silent, infinite aspect and move and have our being through it and be guided by it. And so when you're ready, you may open your eyes. You have a good journey, our maiden little voyage for half an hour. Somebody went out into sleep time. Which is okay. We do have a protocol for that. If someone starts snoring, just nudge them, right? Gently. And if that doesn't fix it, just push them out of the chair onto the floor. No, I'm just kidding. No, don't do it. a kinder, gentler CE5. Anyway, so it's a very simple process. I just want to take you on that. Now, what I would like you to do, now that you have the mantra and the understanding of it, is to do it at least twice a day. And I also recommend that you use an aspect of it when you're going to sleep. Now, one of the most powerful ways to learn and receive information through intuition is in the lucid dreaming state. Now, what that means is you're going to sleep and you awaken inside your dream, but you're conscious within it, and you can intend to see and do things. Some of the times that will lead to an actual flying dream, where you're actually going someplace. Now, when you have a flying lucid dream, what has happened is that your body of light actually is traversing, and it may be around the Earth, and it may be in distant parts of the cosmos, or in other dimensions. And this is one of the chief ways that people have learned information from the ETs. Why? Because when we're in our normal waking state, until we get to a certain level of being grounded in that unbounded mind, our intellect and our bodies and our belief systems and everything else is always running interference. But when we go into dream time, as the Aboriginals of Australia call it, when you go into that dream time state and intend, when you're going into sleep, you ask the Great Spirit to open your inner sight, the aspect of yourself that is this infinite self, to open your inner sight even as you are sleeping. And you will find that many times you will have the most extraordinary contact experiences. And we have had, one time we had a couple, one was a firefighter and one was a policeman from New York City, never had meditated, took seriously what I recommended, and we were out in Borrega Springs, California, in a dark skies community. And that night, because they did it without faithfully, in the sense of not believing in me, but believing they could do it, right? Okay, believe in me or not. I mean, I'm not your guru. You are your own conscious being, the great self. But they literally woke up in the wee hours, and there was an ET physically sitting on their bed. And there was a craft, and it had been detected, that was outside the building, sort of a bluish hue coming in. And they had this telepathic conversation with this ET for about 45 minutes. And then it teleported on the dematerializing and went. This is a real story. And it was after the first night we were out in the desert. And it was a small group, it was maybe 30 or 40 people. But it really is very powerful, because we'll go through this over the weekend. What are the higher states of consciousness and the ordinary ones? The ordinary ones are waking, dreaming, sleeping, right? But there are these others. The samadhi, the pure consciousness state, and then the higher states of consciousness that develop as you get more and more immersed in this unbounded consciousness and deep meditation. And that begins to grow where that's in your forefront of it's present all the time as you're doing ordinary tasks, working, whatever, even sleeping. You're awake in your sleep. So that becomes a state that gets permanent eventually. It doesn't matter. You all have it within you now. And every one of these states of consciousness, all of you will attain, whether it's in this weekend or whether it's over the course of the evolution of your soul. And that's just not human. What I've just described is what is the pattern of all intelligent, higher conscious species in the cosmos. Absolutely. So you see, we're really much more alike with these people from other worlds than we're different, right? We like to emphasize how different we are and then kill each other over it. That's the chimpanzee, primate, human original sin. But these civilizations are not doing that. And if they were, they would vanish in less than a nanosecond, because their technologies are such that they're 1,000,000-fold more advanced than a thermonuclear weapon. The proof that they're not hostile is that they exist with those technologies. Absolutely. That's the proof. And so realize that there are none that are a threat. we're the threat right now to ourselves. We're nuts, right? So, but what we have to do is to evolve to a point where we can get along with anything and anybody, no matter what they look like, no matter where they're from, not just on Earth, but also in space, because we're not alone. And we are way past the time where we should have become a peaceful world civilization. We're past the time when we should have become already a peaceful interplanetary civilization, right? And that is the big task. So you cannot have peace on this planet and then tilt and have war with other worlds. I know that's everyone's fantasy, and Star Wars and Star Trek and every UFO conference, and the good aliens and the bad aliens and the these and the that's, and it's just an extension of the racism that we have on planet to speciesism out in space. That's our problem as a people. But this group, and what we can do, is transcend that, leave those mythologies behind, and with a pure heart and mind, see that we're not alone, make contact with them for a very important purpose. Because we're entering an era, I give us, unless something extraordinary happens, 6 months to 24 months to get this right with what, we'll talk about the post-disclosure world. But what then? I'll tell you what then, you guys, and you guys at home. Because at a certain point, you're going to have to be the leaders of thought and of action in understanding how you make contact with these civilizations. Why? Because, you know, the foreign ministries of various countries and the Secretary of State and people like that don't know how to do all this yet. Some are learning, believe it or not. Even people in this cabal are pivoting. Some of them are pivoting to doing this at very high levels. But it's going to be a mass movement from the ground up, right? And that's all great change happens from us, little folks like me and all of us here. Maybe not, some of you aren't. And it comes up. It goes through society from there. This is the same thing. So we've gone from warring tribes to city-states to nation-states to blocks of countries. We're going to evolve, must, into a peaceful world civilization, no matter what our identities are. But then, that's just the beginning. The real task is for us to become a universal people. One universe, one people. That is the motto for CE5 Contact. So see yourself as that ambassador. And as you go into dream time and tomorrow and all weekend and from henceforth, see yourself as an enlightened person who is these civilizations are looking for. They're looking for people who will do this out of a sincere purpose of becoming a liaison from humans and Earth to their worlds. And they need it, and they want you to do it. And I want to thank all of you for doing that. Now, those of you going to the after party, the night's young. I never go to bed till 4 or 5 a.m., but that's just me. Don't. You can't even imagine what my life's like. But normal people, you may want to go to bed if we're going to be out in the desert the next 2 nights till midnight. So if you go to bed at 1:30, please don't get up out of bed before about 8. You want to get 7 hours or so rest, and then we have a sessions at the morning. It starts at 10, right? That's why we don't have an 8 o'clock session, so you can be out late and then sleep in late. It's hard for people who are morning people, but you can take some melatonin or do whatever, or do a meditation and go to sleep. But you don't want to be if we're going out to the desert at 8 o'clock, you don't want to be asleep in your chair at 9 or 10, right? So the only way you can do that is you just move your time zone awareness around. So I very much recommend that you try to sleep in, at least until 8, 8:30 or so, or even 9. I mean, I can always, if I have something to be at 10, I can get up at 9:15 and be there with bells on. But some people need more time. Now, in the morning, what I'd like you to do is do a meditation before you go out and about. Get up and get yourself sort of awake, and then sit for about 20 minutes and do the meditation, the mantra meditation, or the breathing, or anything else that works for you. If you know something that works better for you, do it. I'm not, just as long as you do some meditative process, okay? Again, I'm not, going to be particular as long as it's something that works for you. And then go about your daily business. So try to do that. And then in the afternoon, after we break our sessions, we'll be breaking about 5:30, and it gives us 2.5 hours to do a meditation, have something light to eat. Remember, everyone in the United States eats about 2 to 3 times more than they need to. This is why it's an epidemic of obesity. But eat more lightly so you're not out meditating under the stars. Okay, have a clean, light diet. So, and then we'll start out there at 8 every night. This is the first time we've done a big group like this for 2 nights in a row. We've always just done it once. This is a maiden voyage for all your guinea pigs. No, you're not. But that's why we're going to do 2 nights in a row, which I think will be great because it builds your skills, and you almost warm up the sight and consciousness as you do this. That's why I wanted to do both nights. But those of you coming to the after party, let's have some fun. All right? All right, so we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.